Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. In today's episode of Friday Morning Ramblings, I'm going to show you all the varieties of tomatoes that I'm growing, go over some tomato tips, and we'll tour the whole garden. Just want to give you an idea of what nature can do. So the tomato right in here seeded itself. It's growing. I have not cared for that except for weeding around it. So I'm just going to let it grow up this cylinder and see what it does. But keep in mind how big it is. And remember, nature did it all itself, or herself. Potatoes, looking pretty good. I've moved them all over back to where they're supposed to be, and I'll be planting out different melons and winter squash in here. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, watering has been pretty much an issue here because we've been getting into the 90s. The last 2 days have been in the 70s, which is great. Close up of what artichokes look like. This is going to be a really cool plant. I usually don't even eat them. I just love how they flower, and they really look like a sea anemone, you know, from the ocean. It's really, really cool watching the bees swim through it, actually. Peas are dying back. I'm clearing out the space, getting ready for the rest of the warm crops. Things are really taking off, all really about the warm soil temperatures and the warmth of, you know, summer. Be doing a video on this. This is just FYI. Those are larvae of the the Colorado potato beetle. They typically have 10 stripes. I'll be able to take care of those, but that's going to be a separate video. I'm going to skip over this section today, get to the tomatoes. My containers, I'm just letting them dry and die out. I'm going to redo all of these. I'm way behind on that. I wanted to plant potatoes in there, you know, but that's the way it is. So we'll tour through, just a quick look. Everything, you know, I'm really happy with how it looks. I'm using a weed eater in the paths. I'm not even weeding by hand. Don't like doing that chore, so I'm keeping it simple. This video is not sponsored. However, all of my Friday morning ramblings are really linked to Freetown Farm, where I volunteer. And if you'd like to donate, please donate through the donate button that you will see right next to this video. All that money is going to go right now to rebuilding the farmhouse, and that's going to be a teaching center and a community center. This is my acorn squash right in there, butternut squash, doing really well. I've been managing the pests on there. Looks good. I'll be thinking about getting sprays on here soon for powdery mildew that comes in. I wanted to show you this too, because look, the bugs are trying to get in there. I don't even know what that is. This one is pretty good. I've been eating out of there. Somehow, those are all aphids in here. A moth got in there, some other insect got in there, must have crawled in. So these work really well unless an insect gets in there. And I really didn't inspect this. I've been saying every, couple of weeks you want to get in there and check to see what's going on. I was just letting it grow. What I did learn is I don't need both. So I'm only going to use one of these. That's plenty of kale for salads that I've been eating just about every other day or so. That's all I need. And that's one thing I recommend too, is don't overplant. A lot of times the pests and disease come because we're growing so much we're not even getting to it, and we don't check on it, and then the pests take over. Kale in here is doing well too. Had some white flies in there. I used some insect dust. I've been spraying under there with just water, keeping it under control. But more importantly, I just got in there, harvested a bunch of the leaves, cleaned the leaves, and ate it. Keep the harvest going. If you're not able to harvest your food and you're not using it, you're growing too much and you're going to get that pest infestation. I hope that makes sense. This area is for a space that I'm doing on growing your food security. I'm trying to teach people that they can garden by just getting a mound out there and get some food planted. If you have comments and you want to inspire gardeners that are just getting started, please put them in the comments. But we have beans. I believe that's a tomato, and these are zucchini right in there. But this is perfect for fast-growing summer crops. It's a cherry tomato. They grow really quickly, so people can get some food growing and, get it to their table. So here's the beginning of my tomato plants, and these were grown indoors, and they're not much bigger right at this point than the one that grew by nature's hand outside. So don't feel like gardening has to be a mystery where you have to start these indoors, take all kinds of care, you know, and do it perfectly to get tomatoes. You don't. That was just a seed that fell out there, and it's taking off, and it's taking off because the soil conditions are warm, the outside conditions are warm, the temperatures are right, basically. So right in here is my Arkansas Traveler. I do sell these metal signs at my seed shop, and you actually write on them with a grease pencil, which comes with it. This is a mystery plant. I don't know what it was, but it reseeded itself. And again, taking a look at all the tomatoes down here, and we'll go by them. This guy that seeded himself, like the one outside the fenced area, is doing really, really well. I don't know what it is, but it dropped right exactly where it should be. So I thought, you know, I'll give it a chance. But I have the Arkansas Traveler, a mystery tomato, and that's an Aunt Ruby's German green. Right at this point, I'm beginning to remove branches on the bottom, so that can put a space in there for airflow. Also keep any potential problems from soil splashing up on there. My green grass that I put down about an inch or two for mulch is dried completely. Now is an okay time to scatter some organic granular around and then put another layer of grass on here. Really keep it mulched. That organic granular is not going to feed these plants right away. It's going to take several weeks for the organic granular to break down with soil life and start feeding the plant. It's a slow release. At this point, let's go down here, I'm giving the tomato plants a quick drink of fish emulsion. I'm also using AgroThrive. I recommend using that if you don't like the odor of the fish emulsion, or fish emulsion is bringing animals to your garden. There's a link in my video description for that. This is a Brandywine Red, Cherokee Purple, and for the drinking of the water soluble, maybe every 10 days right now, 14 days. As they get bigger, I'll increase that. But it's just a quick pour, 4 or 5 seconds right at the base of the roots. And that's all it really needs. That nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all the fertilizer is immediately available. So that's going to help the plant right away. Mountain Gold. So that's 6 plants. Got a Brandywine Pink in there, a Mortgage Lifter, and one of my favorites, the Homestead. The Homestead is really good. Is a really good grower in humid areas, so I do recommend that. And you get about a baseball size tomato off of these plants. I'm not doing any kind of specific pruning in here, but for sometimes removing a couple suckers in there, I'll show you 2 plants that I'm keeping it as a double stem, just 2 stems growing, and I'll explain to you why you might want to do that. The plants right here, I'm just going to let grow, and then I will just take pieces of the plants off as they get bigger, keep some airflow right in between here, kind of keep the plants managed, but there's no specific plan. Pruning is not really so much about perfection and expertise, it's just reducing the plant size. These are all indeterminate varieties. They're all going to do really, really well. The tomato plants I'm showing you now have had their 2nd dose of aspirin spray. I will put the link to that video in the video description, but that basically helps beef up the defenses of the plant to ward off diseases and pests. And they're looking really good, nice and green. I also put down my first spraying of baking soda on here because I do get early blight, sometimes a leaf spot. And what I do is I like to just spray baking soda spray on there, 1 tablespoon per gallon. Always test spray any sprays that you're creating for your plants. And that really helps manage down the problem. I also use hydrogen peroxide. If I start seeing lots of spots on here or problems on here, I'm going to hit this with hydrogen peroxide right away. That helps clean the leaf. In about a week or so, I will just wash the plants with a hydrogen peroxide spray. Search hydrogen peroxide in tomatoes on my channel and you'll see how I do that. It's a really, really great way to manage tomato plants. It's really changed. The hydrogen peroxide has changed how I can grow tomato plants. That's why I do less pruning. Massive looking scallop squash. These containers are looking good. I have watermelons coming in there. Cantaloupe doing its thing. Watermelon, I just trellised that up that side. I have a squash plant in here that I don't know why it's starting to die off. There's no vine borer in there. I've checked it. I think I moved it around and maybe I damaged the roots a little bit, but I'm going to give this a little bit more time to survive, and if not, I'm just going to replace it. Here's kind of another look. All the sunflowers, nature dropped those. And I like having nature having a hand in my garden and just creating, you know, kind of the gardenscape. Cucumbers are doing okay. Doing a series on there. They're about to get sprayed. They're going to get fed. I did harvest a cucumber out of there. As soon as this wild sage kind of is done flowering, I'm going to cut it back. It'll come back, but right now the pollinators are loving it. I'm just looking. I just harvested a cucumber out of here. But whenever I see the vines growing like this, I just tuck them through here, and it's just a nice way to trellis cucumbers right up a cattle panel arch. I will also be pruning all these leaves away on the bottom so that spider mites have a harder time climbing up them. I can get in there and inspect them and just kind of manage the pests and disease better. Right in that corner are my turnips, the beets, all that stuff I've been harvesting, really eating and enjoying. Pepper plants, they're all taking off. They're all about to get fed. They're actually going to get the AgroThrive, that's the water-soluble fertilizer, because it's a 3-2-2, a little more nitrogen and phosphorus and less nitrogen than the fish emulsion I use, which is a 5-1-1 NP and K. You just want less nitrogen. You don't have to over worry about it, but you don't want to give your pepper plants at this point too much nitrogen because they tend to grow more leaves. I want the peppers to start to form. Here are some more tomato plants. This is an early girl. The bottoms of these plants have been pruned more heavily because the plants are bigger. That's a sunray right in there. And then as we go down, that's a big boy. That's another mystery tomato. This one came in late, and I actually moved it from out of those onions and planted it right in there. So it got a little bit beat up, so it's smaller. But it's taking off. Don't know what that's going to be, but again, I want to stress, you don't have to think you have to be perfect when it comes to planting tomatoes in the way of starting them indoors, feeding them perfectly. Nature just does its thing. And that's an Aunt Gertie's Gold, which I've not grown before, so I have a couple new varieties in there. Now what's interesting is the tomato plants that are mysteries that are inside the fence area, they have been getting the fertilizer and care that these other plants are getting. The one that's outside in that coiled cage, I'm not going to feed. I will spray it because I don't want it to get diseases, but let's just see how it does really on its own. So no fertilizing routine is going to happen out there. However, that garden is really based on compost, so we'll see what the compost does. These are the first tomato plants that I got in. They're much bigger. There are tomatoes on here, and you can see the grouping. This one is, let's see, this is a Jubilee. So this is a nice baseball size orange, yellow-orange tomato. So this is pruned out to a double stem. You can see how it V's out. And then I have one going up the post here. And in the joints, I'm removing all the suckers. That's a sucker. That's going to turn into a production stem. And I just did a video on removing these suckers. If you want to check that out, you could actually drop this in water, put it inside in your house, it will root out. But I'm removing these because I don't want another production stem that's going to get as big as this here, and it'll keep growing and it'll do leaves, flowers, and fruit. So the question I always get, well, if I prune, I'm removing tomatoes. Yes, in theory you are. But right now, we have this clump here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, more flowers. 10, 12, 15, 20 are going to be on this stem. Some will start forming on here. You can see them right down there. So just because I'm reducing this to 2 stems doesn't mean I'm going to get few tomatoes. Yes, I will get less tomatoes, but I'm still going to get plenty. So it's really a question of how many do you want. And then if you look over here, you can see another sucker forming in the joint. I'll be removing those. There's one right down there. These will all get fed, another layer of mulch, and you can see the splash barrier between the soil and the upper leaves is slowly being removed. You want to do that slowly. You don't want to just take off 12 inches, 16 inches of leaves from the bottom before the plant is big enough. Let's come over to this one. Flower cluster. Flower cluster. At least 2 tomatoes, maybe as many as 7 on there. There's 6 or 7 tomatoes. There's 3, 6, 9, 10 tomatoes growing on there. This is the Whopper. Some more on here on the other stem. And again, this is a double stem. So a single stem going up here. I'm removing the suckers. You could see the sucker right in there. Remove it. And that will just be trellised right up the stake. Same thing over here. That's a sucker in there that needs to come out. And you just snap them out. And remember, you can put these in water. However, you know, you're going to get hundreds of those. And if you don't have the space, you know, what are you going to do with them? Some more right in there. 2 stems, and that's already what we said. 4, 8, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 tomatoes on here already. That is a lot of tomatoes. So you can prune your tomato plants really as you wish. That's nothing to worry about right on there. But it is a point of concern where I'm like, what is that? Why is that starting? And I can see it in different places. So that's part of the reason I put the fungicide down now, the spray on the leaves, and I'll be hitting it with hydrogen peroxide. Here's another one. Lots of flowering going on. The heat has slowed this one down a little bit. There is some leaf die-off, it's hard to see in the sun, and markings on there. So I'm keeping an eye on things. If you have disease coming in, pretty much all 4 of these plants would have it on the bottom. This is the one that looks the worst out of, I don't know what I have, 30 plants here or something. So I'm keeping an eye on it. But again, this one is it's just in the beginnings of a double stem. A stem right there, stem right there. You go from the single one, V it out, and you have 2. And there's plenty of growth. Now, as this one gets taller, I'm going to let it V out again. So this one is going to go 2, and then a stem coming up here, then it'll go to 2, and I'm going to let this one just kind of do something funky. I'll be doing more videos on it, but you can have fun with pruning. You don't have to think you have to be perfect. Coming right over here, well, my shadow's going to be in here, but we have to do it for this one. This is another mortgage lifter. Sometimes these do really well, sometimes they struggle in my garden. So I just wanted to see if having it in 2 places, I want to see what happens. If they both struggle in different places, I may not grow this one anymore. Here is my main arch for cherry tomatoes. On this side, these are the larger tomatoes. This one is the Big Beef. It's a new variety that I'm trying out. And you're going to see the same pattern. Here I use shredded hardwood as a mulch. That is the pineapple. That's a black crim. That's a Ball's beefsteak. That's a new variety. This is going to be turned into something. I'm not sure what I'm going to grow in here. Garlic and leeks are doing okay. This garlic is pretty much ready to come out. It's starting to flower. I might let this kind of create little flowers on here and eat the garlic scapes that form in here. They're really delicious, stir-fried and put into things. There's another wild tomato that I just put an A-frame on to support it. I was growing tomatoes in here last year. That one started growing itself. I always like to give an update. Look at all the blackberries. They're going to be ready in about a week. And if you do find my videos helpful and you do donate, please consider donating to Freetown Farm or the Community Ecology Institute. Look at, I mean, there are so many. It's going to be like 1,000 blackberries, and this is just one side. We'll go all the way down over to there. Coming around this way, those are my Muscadines. That's a tunnel under there. So I did not prune anything in there, and that was sort of a mistake. But it looks really cool, and the flowers are forming. I'm going to have Muscadines. I'll be cutting, you can't really see it from here, but I'll be clearing out the entrance and the exit of the tunnel so people can actually get in there. Actually 3 varieties of cherry tomatoes here. That's a Chadwick Cherry down there. This is a black cherry, and then this is the Sweet 100, which is a really good tomato plant for cherry tomatoes. They are sweet. The plant grows really well. I mean, look how big it's getting. And I'm just weaving the stems through here. Anything that grows out this way, I'm cutting off. That's how I'm pruning this plant. So I just want a wall of cherry tomatoes up this side. We'll go over to the pepper plants too. This is a black cherry, which I grow just about every year. That's the black cherry. And I will kind of start with pruning it so it's 2 stems, one going out this way, one going out this way. But like the one I was just showing you on the single stake, I will keep letting this V out and spread that through here. Pruning anything that's sticking out here that I can't really trellis in between the cattle panel, and anything that goes out that way. And it'll be plenty of tomato plants. The Chadwick Cherry, I'm trying to do a couple different colors and varieties of cherry tomatoes. Last year I had 4 in here. It was too many, so I'm glad I stuck to my guns. So it's 3 plants. This is a Juliet. This is a grape tomato, and you can see them in here. This is one of my favorite tomatoes. My wife likes these, and they end up looking like this. It's an All America Selections winner, but there you go. Now you can see the spotting on there. That is a little bit of a concern. Sprayed this plant, everything should be okay. Eggplant's starting to come back. I'm hitting this every 7 days with water-soluble fertilizer. I'm using the fish emulsion and the AgroThrive just to give them, you don't have to do that. I mean, plants aren't that particular, but I'm just trying out AgroThrive more, and I'm really enjoying it for how it impacts and works with my plants. But the point is more nitrogen in here, because these just aren't greening up right. They're not growing right. So every 7 days, some sort of water-soluble fertilizer with nitrogen, get them growing until I'm happy, and then I'll cut back and just do maybe every 10 to 14 days, depending on what's going on. This is another wild cherry that just seeded itself. However, it seeded itself over here, and it was really tall. So I dug a trench right in here, pushed the stem down gently, buried it, and then the top is coming up over here. So the stem actually goes all the way through here. That will root out, and I think that plant will do well. And I actually want it to mix in with these blackberries just to see, you know, what happens. And you can see all the blackberries on here. There's one. That's what a blackberry starts to look like when it's mature. This is a whole other section, because either they seeded from over there, you know, when something fell, or maybe there was a runner. Again, these are clumping varieties. They've been really kept over there for 4 years. Last year, some came up over here, so this 4th year I'm letting it take over probably this whole side of the cattle panel. I just love the blackberries. But I think, because then when I pick all the blackberries, then I have the rest of the summer and not much going on. So I want to see if I can mingle the cherry tomato through here and see what it grows. So I think that's going to look cool. Here are the 25 jalapenos that I'm growing in a 4-foot by 4-foot space. They are doing really well. I still haven't gotten in and kind of cleared off the bottom leaves, but I'm using black polycord right here all the way around, and then right down, let's see, you can see it right there, right down the middle over to the other post, and then a piece from that post over there, and that's the support. So that's keeping these up. The wind has been really crazy. You should have seen the wind here yesterday. When you look up in the trees, they were just whipping back and forth, but down here at the lower level where we live, you couldn't feel it. So it was so bizarre that it was just above us, just whipping those trees around. But look how dense that is. You do have to give these a little bit more fertilizer. You have to water them more, but this is an experiment. And I'll be putting a video together showing this, but I'm waiting for the harvest to start so I can kind of get everything into the video. I think we'll end there, really focusing on the tomato plants. This is the garden. At this point, all back there is asparagus. It's going to just stay there and charge itself up over the summer. Didn't show you the blueberries this time, but they're doing really well. And I like listening to the birds. You hear them all the time here. It's really cool. Look how tall the sunflowers are. And they do get tall and they get heavy, and that's a sun sugar. I don't know if I missed that one or not, but that's a sun sugar tomato. That's going to go right up here. You do have to watch the weight of the sunflowers. So I've tied this one right here to the post because it was leaning way over. And eventually this will get so heavy, it's just going to snap. So you do have to support these tall sunflowers if they don't grow straight. And if you have a lot of wind, like I do in my area, you might want to support them anyway if you can. Cantaloupe watermelon we talked about. Just got in some new cucumbers. And these are sunflowers that I planted. I have beans growing in there, and they're going to look really cool because they're going to come all the way up to here. They're 10-foot and 12-foot sunflowers. All right, so now we will officially end right in this space. These are all my different apples, 4 different varieties grafted onto one trunk. It's out of control, but it's growing. All right, thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. I'll be doing a live stream today at 3 p.m. and it's really to help people who have not gardened before begin to grow food to help with their food security. And it's being set up so that people that watch can comment, and those comments will stay with the live video in replay. But please follow me in there and leave comments that you think will help new gardeners begin to grow food. I think it's really, really important. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com and enjoy your day.